What's going on, guys? My name is Tyler Louder, and I am here to bring you guys Second and Short. I am back. Now, a couple weeks ago, I left off with talking about trade impacts and big news and, who's going to get sent where. We talked about Matt Stafford and Jared Goff. And in today's episode, we're going to kind of touch on some similar things and some speculations. But before we do that, there is a couple tidbits of breaking news, something that we should bring up and everything. So the first thing that we should talk about here is the Miami Dolphins signed a kicker Jason Sanders to a 5-year, $22 million contract extension, $10 million in guarantees, and this will leave him with the Dolphins pending releases, cuts, trades till 2026. Over the past 2-3 years, he has been one of, if not the best kicker in the league. So the fact that he's getting his money is just and due. And that's something that we applaud him for. And in my eyes, it's a good move. You pay the people that do well for you. He makes big plays on big days. Simple as that. Now, in other news, switching, sad news, is former San Diego Charger and Tampa Bay Buccaneer wide receiver Vincent Jackson, who last played in the NFL back in 2016, was found deceased yesterday at the Hollywood Suites in Brandon, Florida, according to the police. His death is still under investigation by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Again, he was 38 years old, very young to die. And, he had a pretty good NFL career. He was a decent number 2 receiver. I would like to just kind of reflect on his career a little bit and talk about the positives of it, less than the negative aspect of it and everything. 12-year career. Like I said, played with the Chargers, played with the Buccaneers, spent the last 5 years with the Buccaneers, mentored Mike Evans. In those 12 years, 540 receptions, 9,080 yards, 57 touchdowns, 3-time Pro Bowler. Like I said, really good wide receiver, great number 2 on a team, somebody that really could be a reliable force for Phillip Rivers and Jameis Winston to some extent, as well there in Tampa Bay for a short time. But another thing that he was that's more important, at least in my eyes, he was a 4-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in his final 4 seasons there. This is a very prestigious honor, as this is somebody that gives back to the community, that is very active and uplifting and positive towards those that, pay the respects to the players, that are paying for their jerseys and ticket sales and giving all back to them, is something that Vincent Jackson prided himself on. And it's clear that the NFL is going to be losing a very good guy. That's the most important thing that we're looking at here. It's not that he was a good player or anything. He was just a genuine good guy. And, respects go out to the family. There's really no positive way to turn this and transition everything. But it is sad to see somebody so positive in the community that he was involved in to leave us so early. Now, when we move and everything, there's some news going on elsewhere in the NFL. There's lots of talks about guys wanting to ring chase now. We're seeing this situation where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have just literally pretty much brought in a bunch of other people, Leonard Fournette off the street, Antonio Brown off the street, Tom Brady, free agent. Rob Gronkowski was in WWE last year. All these guys came back Tampa Bay, came on in, won a ring, and now we're going to start seeing this whole ring chasing narrative in the NFL that normally we see in sports like the NBA. I mean, I'm seeing stuff like Larry Fitzgerald should leave the Cardinals and go ring chase, which, yeah, he should. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but we're going to see more and more of this. Now, speaking of kind of ring chasing, we were talking about this. I did a little bit on social media. I kind of expanded upon and talked about JJ Watt and how he was just recently cut this past Thursday by the Houston Texans. They mutually parted ways. They are no longer each other's dinner dates to family gatherings. And I started the question going around everybody's minds is, why didn't they just trade him? Why not get a 3rd or 4th round pick? Why not get anything for him? Now, for me, I understand wanting to do right by your players. You want to show everybody else in the building, all the other people on the team, that if things aren't going the way that they need to be. JJ Watt wanted out, pay him respect. He's like top 5 in like every defensive rushing category over the past 8-9 years. His play has decreased over the past few years due to injury, but overall, he's been a really good player and a really great player. Elite. And granting him his release looks like a good move on level. When you're just looking at ground level stuff, doing right by your players is okay. However, Houston Texans have a history of not doing right by their players. I mean, just last year, they traded away DeAndre Hopkins, who at the time was their best player on the team. And now they're in this situation with Deshaun Watson, who doesn't want to be there anymore, and they're not trading him. It's just so confusing. Like, you're not trading him, which is what he wants, but you are going to just cut JJ Watt to save money, which is a positive in that. But I can tell you right now, there are teams out there that would have sent him a 3rd-round pick just for JJ Watt, just so that they don't have to compete in free agency. They did clear $17 million. That is big. Now, let's talk about JJ Watt for a little bit longer. Where could he go? I mean, everybody, if we're being lazy, let's just say Pittsburgh, because his brothers play there. That's the easy, lazy answer. Pittsburgh doesn't have the cap space really for it right now. They'd have to move some stuff around. I'm sure they can make it work, but it's not the ideal destination right now. And we'll talk about cap, pretty much where everybody's at among the cap situation here in our next segment. But another lazy option is Green Bay. Just go to the Packers, right? Like, it's okay if you go to the Packers because you're from Wisconsin. That's your area. It's your territory. It's where you played. Like, sure. But again, can they afford him? He'd be a great fit there in Green Bay. Now, something that came up just a couple hours ago is apparently JJ Watt is okay and open and maybe contemplating about actually going there to playing with the Cleveland Browns, playing opposite of Myles Garrett, who is pretty much replacing JJ Watt as one of the elite premier defensive ends in this league. The Browns are projecting up, and they're a destination that people want to go to because A, they're willing to pay you, B, they're willing to push to try and get better, and C, it's a chance to get a ring potentially. I know it's Cleveland. That's insane to think of it. Some people say it's a fallacy and everything. It's, this fantasy world that the Browns are actually good because we all remember who the Browns are. But if I'm JJ Watt, that's a legit option to go to because you have all those other playmakers around you. You don't have to be the guy every play to know that your team's going to do well. So that's another thing to look out there. I mean, he's one of the biggest names on the free agent market. There's going to be more names on the free agent market, including big cap casualties that we're going to talk about here after the break. We're going to break down each team's kind of salary cap, where they're at, who has money, who's broke and in debt, owing money to their schools or whatnot, and who's going to be cut. Who do we think are the big names that could be cap casualties? This is 89.1 KBHU, 90.7 KJKT, The Buzz, 2nd&Short by Tyler Louder, the NFL premiere show of BH. And now let's take a little music break. We'll be right back after this song. Welcome on back to 2nd&Short. My name is Tyler Louder, and we are here to talk about some more NFL action. Before the break, we kind of talked about JJ Watt, him getting cut, released, mutually parting ways, and then we also kind of let off with who we think maybe, we're not even telling you who yet, about speculating on who might get cut this offseason and make a big name for themselves in free agency. We're also going to review some of these cap space that teams have and actually that don't have. So the biggest thing that we have to look at here first, before we talk about names to be cut, because this will kind of tie into each other, is who has money, who doesn't have money. And it's actually interesting to see. So the number one pick in the NFL draft is projected to be Trevor Lawrence going to the Jacksonville Jags. That's who holds the number one pick, and there's a lot of exciting things going on in Jacksonville. Not only do they hold the number one pick, are they probably going to get their franchise quarterback? They just signed Urban Meyer to be their head coach. There's some controversy on some strength and conditioning coaches that they brought in from Iowa. We're not going to dive on that today. But on top of that, they have the most cap space, topping at $79 million in the NFL. The fact that they have that much cap space opens the doors that anything can happen. This team could look completely different. Now, they still have 58 players signed to their initial roster going into this season, average age of about 25 and a half, so a relatively young roster that's only going to get younger. They're open to pretty much get whoever they want. They have no dead money, so even if they cut guys, it's still not even going to hurt them. They're probably going to balance out 50-50 at worst. A lot of these things coming this offseason depend on how you cut people, post June 1st or post June 1st. And when we say that, essentially what it means is if you do post, the dead cap doesn't necessarily carry over into this season. It carries over a year later. Anything pre that date can carry over within that year. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about who just got cut this morning for the Carolina Panthers. But then we keep going online, and the Indianapolis Colts, they also have about $78 million, and they've actually had a lot of money for a long time, which kind of is the reason why they've been tied into trading for quarterbacks this entire offseason. I mean, they could get Carson Wentz, who has a huge contract, but like I just said, they have so much money. And then you keep going down the list. You have Jets, Patriots, Bengals, football team, Denver, Dolphins, Chargers, Browns, rounding out the top 10. The average NFL salary cap is about $15 million in space that they have. Now, when I say there's an average of 15, that's the league average, it kind of drops. Once you get to, about 21, that's all. That's 21 teams that are in the positive. Everybody else in the negative. And we go to the very bottom of this list. You have the New Orleans Saints, Philadelphia Eagles, who are a combined $105 million in debt. The New Orleans Saints are negative $65 million. The Philadelphia Eagles are negative $41 million. Now, why are teams in the hole? Well, for the past 5-6 years, the NFL salary cap has kind of been raising on average of about 9 to 10 million. So when you think about that, every year you're going to be gaining about 10 million. So it's okay. You don't have to worry about as much to deal with. Well, there's about a 30 million swing this year because the cap is actually dropping about 17 million from 2020 to 2021. That number could change based on the addition of the NFL talking about adding a 17th game. But this all is due to the pandemic and the loss of revenue that each NFL franchise and the NFL in general had. Now, obviously, they could sign with another network, get more games produced out there, bring in more money, and we could see this cap number kind of fluctuate and change. But right now, each team kind of lost an extra 10 million they were supposed to get in allowance money. We could look at it, and they lost some of the money they've been saving. And that 30 million kind of really hit hard on teams like the New Orleans Saints, who now are, hugely in debt. And the reason why it's significant is because you have to be back under to even sign people in free agency. It's kind of like a little thing that you can't buy something if you ain't got no money. Simple as that. You can't go to the bank and ask for a loan if you already owe them $65 million. So what's that mean? Who's going to get cut? Who's going to get traded? Can they restructure deals? It's limitless. It's so hard to predict these things because somebody like Drew Brees, if he leaves the Saints, retires, that clears about, I'm roughly estimating, about 20 to 21 million off the books. They have other guys that have mega deals. Can you restructure those deals, meaning that you're going to give them less money this year and push it back or switch it into bonuses, which come off of a different book and everything? There's so much details knowing salary caps and everything. And even those that know that are not in the business or not on the team, we don't really know. We say we know. I'm acting like I know. But really, there's so much unknown out there. There's so much extra written stuff inside their contracts. Now, with all that being said, we kind of talked about people that we think are going to get cut from the NFL. And what I mean from their team and going to free agency. So, J.J. Watt, we just talked about it last segment, was cut last Thursday. Texans saved like about 15 to 17 million. Once we know details, it's a lot of money to save, which is the reason why they're able to move forward. And, the Texans got themselves to 10 million in salary cap right now. And that number can keep changing, especially if they get rid of Deshaun Watson. That number's going to move and everything like that. Another big thing that just happened this morning that we were talking about is the Carolina Panthers cut K'Wan Short. Now, with the Carolina Panthers cutting K'Wan Short, this is huge. This is mega because K'Wan Short was a very influential member of the Carolina Panthers for the past 8 years. He ranks he ranks 7th in franchise history among sacks with 32.5 in his Carolina history. He's tied for 6th among NFL defensive tackles since 2013. But with Carolina cutting him, the number's been going everywhere. They're going to save 13 million, save 14 million. Well, they deem this a pre-June 1st cut, which means all of his dead money that he has, he's supposed to make about 20 million this year, is going to carry over into this season, meaning going into next offseason, they'll be completely wiped of his books. But going into this offseason, they're going to be saving, it's like 8.5 million. So 8.5 million extra is going to go into Carolina's pocket, pushing them up out of number 16, kind of up to like 14 or 13 in salary cap space, making them, players in this free agency game. So with that being said, the pandemic, will it keep affecting games going forward? Are these teams going to be able to make money from teams? I mean, like, we're sitting here looking at like, oh man, like the Packers let in 20,000 people. Kansas City let in 20,000 people. How nice of them. No, they're doing it for their pockets. They're running out of money to sign players. They need you to give them money so they can keep signing players. And it's this weird relationship because I feel like fans of the city are okay to do that because A, they get entertainment out of it. And then B, they're almost putting money back into the organization and the revenue of the NFL, which is going to bring in better players for their team. Now, when we sit here and we talk about who could be cut this offseason, big names that are going to be cut across the NFL, I think the biggest names that we have to look at are Alshon Jeffrey out of Philly, who's going to save the Eagles about $13 million from being cut. They got in Jalen Reagor last year, so they're relatively getting younger. They are willing to push the mold. Now, obviously, they could trade Carson Wentz. That's another huge move. And they could cut Malik Jackson, who will save them another $10 million. Another big name to be cut is New Orleans Saints' Quan Alexander. $13 million can be saved from that move. Now, we're talking about some of the guys that maybe could get cut. Golden Tate is another prediction of mine. Saves about $8 to $10 million for the New York Giants, who are kind of moving in this younger way anyways. And then David Johnson, who was just traded to the Houston Texans. Houston, you got a problem here. You need more money. You're losing players. Nobody wants to play there. But that's my prediction there. Those names, how big of an impact does that make? Well, the Philadelphia Eagles are 41 million in the hole. If they can cut Alshon Jeffrey and Malik Jackson, that's 23 million right there. And for me, I think it is insane that more teams, when they have salary cap, like we're talking the bigger teams up top, the Colts, Jags, Jets, you got the most money. You need to front load these contracts. Why do more teams not front load contracts? Why do they back load them and hope that they don't have to deal with it until later? Front load it, pay them as much money as you can now while they're in their prime, while they're playing at the peak of their career, and then you can move forward. It'll be interesting to see who's going to get cut going forward, which direction we're going to see these teams going. And when we come back after this break, we're going to kind of talk about this offseason. We're going to give a little bold prediction, and we're going to kind of say what is going to be very odd and different about this NFL season compared to any other offseason we've ever seen. This is 89.1 KBHU, 90.7 KJKT, The Buzz, where now the music steps in. Welcome on back to 2nd&Short. My name is Tyler Lauder, and I'm here to talk about more NFL action. And we just left off talking about older players, cap casualties. We talked about ring chasers. And there's something very important that I kind of want to talk about here. Now, as recent as this morning, Adrian Peterson has stated that he would like to play until he's 40. He wants to sign with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, play with Tom Brady. He wants to ring chase. This is a player that missed 2 years of his career. And had he not missed those 2 years of, a huge injury and pretty much being on suspension, I think he would be even higher up on his rushing yard list. Now, he wants to play and win a ring. Not only does he want to win a ring, he wants to break Emmitt Smith's rushing record. Now, he's currently sitting at 5th all-time of rushing yards, just under 1,500 rushing yards. He is within the realm, less than 500 yards away from passing Barry Sanders, but he's about 3,500 yards away from passing Emmitt Smith. Now, if he plays till he's 40, he needs to average 707 yards over the next 5 years to break that. Is it possible? Absolutely. With the way Frank Gore's playing, anything's possible. With Adrian Peterson, who is one of the best running backs of all time, it might actually happen in the next 5 years. Now, when we talk about which teams could sign him, obviously he wants to go to Tampa Bay. Is that realistic? Maybe. I mean, Leonard Fournette's on a 1-year deal. Ronald Jones has had some fumbling issues here and there. He's still young, but he just had pins removed out of his hand. I don't know if his health is as healthy as they want him to be, but if Leonard Fournette doesn't stay there, Adrian Peterson is the type of bruiser nowadays that they could bring in, give him about 150 touches, and he's going to help this team out in short yardage situations. We saw what he's been able to do with Detroit and Washington over these past couple of years, and he's still productive. Adrian Peterson, in my eyes, is one of the top 5, top 3 running backs of all time. I will live and die on that hill. And I'm not even a Vikings fan, so I'm not like being a homer here talking about this. Something that we really underestimate is how good these guys are for how long. And Adrian Peterson in his career has averaged about 14 to 1,500 yards per year. Had he not missed those 2 years that he did, I mean, he was those 2 years coming off a 2,000-yard season. He almost broke the single-season rushing record. He was about 8 yards short. Had he not missed those 2 years, I mean, he'd only be about 1,000, probably less than 1,000 yards away from breaking Emmitt Smith's record. And that's the reason why I believe he is one of, if not the greatest running back of all time in that realm. We're going to do another song break. Come on back, and I'm going to give my big, bold take on how many quarterbacks I think will be traded going into the 2021 season. There's 32 starters every year. How many of them will be the exact same starters from 2020 to 2021? What's going on, guys? Welcome on back to 2nd&Short. My name is Tyler Louder, and over today's episode, radio show that we're doing here, we've been talking about a lot of things NFL, as we will always do every Tuesday. We've talked about the contract extension that we've seen of Jason Sanders. We've talked about J.J. Watt and where he could potentially go. All the salary cap information that you even need to know. You probably don't need to know, but you just want to know. Who knows? And who I think is going to be a cap casualty going into this season, as well as talking about Adrian Peterson's comments today and where he's going to move forward on. Now, we need to talk about the most exciting thing of every week that we're going to keep talking about, and that is the trade market. Who's going to stay? Who's going to go? Now, we've already seen a couple quarterbacks move, right? We already have Matt Stafford playing with the Rams now. Jared Goff is now in Detroit. And we've seen quarterbacks that are unhappy, from Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, and Aaron Rodgers. Maybe I don't know. He could be unhappy. He could just like to voice his opinion a lot. But what we do know is that these guys somebody's going to get traded. They're going to keep moving, and I expect. I told you before the break that I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I expect multiple names to be traded, cut, released, signed, something like that. It's all going to switch. Of the 32 quarterbacks we had starting week 1, the 2020 season, I predict that we will have 19 brand new starting quarterbacks from this year on week 1, just week 1. There's already some names that are guaranteed to move out. Mitch Trubisky has been said he's not going to come back to Chicago, so he's out. We already know that we have 2 quarterbacks moved. So that's 3 that are already there. I just got hit 16 more. And as soon as we see another trade here or there, that's just going to keep piling on. Then you add to the fact that Trevor Lawrence is going to be drafted by the Jacksonville Jags. There's talks of somebody getting, there's Zach Wilson in the draft from BYU. He's going to go in the top 10. Maybe Justin Fields will keep going in the top 10. Maybe even Trey Lance from North Dakota State will sneak into the top 10. 4 quarterbacks, I think, from this year's rookie class have a real legit chance to start week 1. Deshaun Watson, we're not going to talk too much on him because he is the hot topic and everything. Texans are going to play hardball. I honestly think he will hold out if they do not trade him. But let's talk about Carson Wentz. Talk about him a little bit more. Carson Wentz, apparently, the Indianapolis Colts have offered 2 second-round picks. Philly wants more. Now, I get them wanting more. I totally get it. However, Carson Wentz's contract is not something that every team can take on. The Colts can. Carson Wentz is not your starter going forward. Granted, they do have a new coach and everything, but Frank Wright worked with him when he was in Philly. He's now in Indy. If he thinks he can work with him, then he can. But you have Jalen Hurts, your second round draft pick, who started a couple games for you, looked good, kind of a little spark plug to your offense. On top of that, it's already been reported that multiple receivers on the young side, like Jalen Reagor and some others, Travis Fulham, are wanting and going to work with Jalen Hurts over the next month. So because they're actually already going forward, the team's telling you that's who their quarterback is. You know that's your future quarterback because, you've already played him. You've already benched Carson Wentz. You're already talking about trading him. Why not just take what you can get? I will never understand why teams will sit and wait to get a trade done at the 12th hour, like the 11th hour, right before the clock strikes midnight. Why? Why do that? Why not trade when you can, get your picks in? Now you know what you have, and now you can assess the draft talent properly instead of just like, oh, no, okay, now we have this pick. Who are we going to pick? If you don't hold the number one pick, you're not going to be scouting the Trevor Lawrence. Simple as that. In my eyes, if you're drafting at 28, you're not going to be scouting Trevor Lawrence because he's not going to fall that far. But if you made a big deal and we're drafting at number 3 or 4, you should probably know what's going on with these guys. So if you're not going to keep him and that's the best offer you can get, take it. For me, it's the best move for Carson Wentz because they're the most stability there. And you need to do what's best for you. If you have any say, the Chicago Bears are another team apparently who could send a couple seconds and Nick Foles, send him back and send like another pick, like a 4th or 5th. Here's another question though. Last thing before we get out of here. Indianapolis Colts, why not just send a 1st round pick? Like, why not? Like, if you think you're a piece away, I feel like it's better just to, in your eyes, overpay to get the piece you need to get over that hump to be consistent. Like, it's not like you're trading for Carson Wentz as a luxury because you just want to have multiple good quarterbacks in your roster. Philip Rivers retired. Jacoby Brissett has shown that he's not a legit starting quarterback in the NFL. He's serviceable, but serviceable doesn't win you Super Bowls. It can get you far, but not far enough. If you think Carson Wentz is good enough to bring in for 2 second-round picks, then he's still good enough to bring in for a 1st-round pick. We see 1st-round picks fade out all the time in the 20s. We see guys get traded, let go, not signed to their 5th-year option. It happens. Colts, go make the big move if you want to compete and be the team in your division. Jags are in the cellar, moving up. Hopefully, you'd assume so. Texans are even further in the cellar, bottom of the NFL, and the Titans are a team that you've shown that you can compete with. Go do what you can to be the team in your division again. And that is going to do it for us here on 2nd and Short. Be sure to check us out on social media. We are everywhere on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, at 2nd and Short. I'll be back next Tuesday to talk about more NFL stuff. Hopefully some more trades happen over the weekend. We're going to also dive into, bold predictions for the season, some things that I'm going to put my foot in my mouth about, but I'm going to stand by and hold strong. My name is Tyler Louder. I will see you guys next week.